Hello and welcome to The Novice. Today, my guest on the show is Harley Sidner. Harley is a fantastic Seattle entrepreneur who runs a company called Peace Vans. Peace Vans makes about $10 million in annual revenue, employs 30 people, has multiple buildings, and their job is to manifold, to restore Volkswagen vans, to rent out vans to tourists who seek adventure in the great outdoors. They also do electric conversions of old vans to new cool electric cars. Harley started this company because he really wanted to own and operate a small business. And one day he had an opportunity to buy an old repair shop in Seattle. So he did. He dove in head first and never looked back. He runs a fantastic company. His employees love it. They're dedicated. They provide great service. Their customers love it because Harley delivers unparalleled customer service. For him, this company isn't just about the business. It's a community. It's an adventure. It's a way to connect with people. And he's so good about his customer service that he doesn't even mind driving somewhere 2 hours away in the middle of the night just so he can deliver a replacement van for a customer. I think you're really going to love the conversation with Harley because you'll learn what it's like to own and operate a small business, what it takes to be a great community leader, what it takes to have a team that can rely on you, but also give you feedback. And if you ever thought about starting a company, starting a business, this would be a really good primer for you for what you're going to go through. So without further ado, Harley Sidner.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. I mentor a lot of small business owners, and I always tell people you're going to have an existential crisis at least once a quarter, an average once a quarter. And it's just
Nice.
hard. You got to be an entrepreneur, particularly in a manufacturing environment where the fixed costs are high. Like you've got to really, it's not for everyone. So, yeah.
So let's start by tell me, like you basically run the most epic van company in the world.
Mhm.
Um, but where is it now? Like, what's the size? What do you do daily basis, right? Like, how big is it?
Yeah. So, roughly speaking, Peace Fencing, we have about 30 employees. We're spread across 4 buildings, around 25,000 square feet. In our business, parking is a metric. So we have about 150 parking spots. It's actually a huge enabler, and it can be an inhibitor of this kind of business because like vans are big, vehicles, it's just hard to manage like physical assets like that. We do about 10 million in revenue. We've architected fairly, decent margin structures. So yeah, and we're at a kind of an inflection point, because of our big revenue driver and profit driver, the Mercedes Metris van, the little van we, invested heavily in. They discontinued it. The OEM Mercedes was like, well, we're just not going to make this anymore. Which has always been, when you look at your business and you can do a Porter's Five Forces or you can do a SWOT analysis. That was always like a risk with that part of the business. Like we don't actually control our supply chain. So we're recovering from that, and it's been an interesting journey to, figure out, well, how do you replace that giant chunk of profitable revenue? And when
But
you're
right
really
now you
dependent on an
do,
OEM.
but right now you fix old Volkswagen
Yeah.
vans,
So we have about
you
six.
rent them
Yeah.
out,
Yep. Yeah, we
you
have
make them
6 lines of
electric.
businesses. Yeah.
Okay, go on.
So the whole thing started with the VW repair shop. And the origin, the story that's on the internet, and it's a classic, but it's, my daughter, I'd always wanted a Volkswagen van or a bus. I grew up going to Grateful Dead shows, smoking a ton of pot, the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, just always, fetishize the whole Volkswagen thing. Never actually like pulled the trigger on one, like regrettably. And then like when my daughter was born in 2010, I don't know, like I was just like a little panic driven. I was like, I need an escape pod. Like I need a vehicle and I need a way to make sure she gets outdoors as much as possible. And I was like, something, I'm not going to defer this dream any longer. And, the Volkswagen vans were coming back into vogue right around that, 2009, 10, 11. It was starting to become, you could just feel sort of the shift again. So I purchased one of the vans and couldn't find anyone in Seattle to work on it. And I found a few places and they all sucked. And it's the classic story where I found a shop. They sucked just as bad as everyone else. But they, it was kind of a cute little shop. There's three guys, had a good name, Peace Fans. And the owner was completely batshit crazy. And he was going to close the shop down. He was losing money, but it was like busy, losing money. And I was like, this, like, I was like, don't close it down. Like, I'll take it over. And I came home, and I probably even told you the story. Like, I mean, I told my wife, I came home and I was like, hey, I'm gonna take over that van shop. I'm taking the van. She's like, that's a fucking ridiculous idea. Why? And I was like, that's the sign that this is a good thing. Because in most relationships, you have a dreamer and a realist.
Mhm.
And I think that's what makes a lot of relationships work. And like, I'm the dreamer. I'm like, I can buy this. I didn't even buy it. I can just take over this failing VW business and do something cool with it. And I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but it seems like it'll be a lot of fun. And my wife, the realist, is like, that's a fucking dumb idea. So that's my indicator usually that it's like I should do this. So it's very low risk, and at that point I was in a good space to like just I thought it'd be a side hustle, fun business to own. I thought it'd be funny, to own
Mhm.
like a VW van business, like and I was kind of into peace. So
And at that time, you just finished the stint at Microsoft. Is
I'd
that?
been out of Microsoft around 7 or 8 years. So I left Microsoft, I think, in like 2008. And it was really to pursue small business ownership. I really, really wanted my own small business. I had been working in a really interesting team, Windows marketing, like core Windows consumer marketing, which is such a hard problem. Like, how do you market a monopoly? And it's like anyone's worked on Windows. In marketing, it's this, like, how do you get the two billionth person, to use your
Hmm.
product that's
Hmm.
installed on every PC? And my manager at the time, I was focused on small business marketing in the U.S. And my manager at the time was like, why don't you just go on a tour of like 20 small businesses in the US and get a feel for how they use Windows? So I like literally went to like the Midwest and I visited like an HVAC manufacturer. I visited like a temp agency. I visited mostly like small manufacturers. And I was like, holy shit, like these guys are making a ton of money. These are totally under the radar screen businesses. They've got a great lifestyle. I was like, I want to do that. And so I kind of, went back and figured out how I exited Microsoft and started pursuing like a path of small business ownership. And so, I had a bunch of small businesses. And then, when Peace Fans presented itself as an opportunity, I was like, well, this just be like another thing I have in my portfolio, and it'll be a fun thing to work on. And but it took on a life of its own.
I
And
didn't realize you had something else going before that. What were the other businesses you were
I
doing
mean, I
before?
had a wholesale nursery distribution company, so I was actually one of the largest plant brokers, potted
Hmm.
floral plants on the West Coast. Like, we supplied Walmart with all their Easter lilies west of the Mississippi. So we didn't
Wow.
actually own any plants. We were brokers. Super interesting business model, high risk, high reward. It was really like intense. Like, I owned the plants for maybe 3 or 4 days. Like I would, you know, buy them from the nurseries, the relationships I had, and then we back up hundreds of FedEx trucks to dozens of nurseries, load them in, then distribute them out to Walmart's, Rite Aids.
And so
Uh,
you had no inventory, no trucks, nothing. You just
yeah,
basically bring it all together
yeah.
ad hoc.
High risk, high reward. Yeah,
And,
and
and what? And the risk is that what? The flowers will just
yeah,
die
like
along the
Valentine's
way.
Day, like, get stuck at the pass, they rot, you're moving a living product. Um, and, terms with the company, I really, we'll get back a little more into the story with, my working with Mercedes. Like, I gained a lot of experience working with Walmart. Like, I kind of knew how big companies work from Microsoft from my past experience, but as a vendor into a company, but I was a vendor to Walmart, and I really learned like how those relationships and work, and so that was really helped me when I started working with Mercedes. So yeah, so that was a really interesting business to own and operate, and and I liked flowers. So
But let's rewind a little bit.
yeah.
So, you leave Microsoft. I'm assuming that was a good departure, right? So you have a
Oh, it's
little bit of
great.
money
Yeah, they
now.
they would hire me back. Even to this day, they would probably hire me back.
It's a pretty good fallback plan,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah,
one day everybody goes into retirement, you're like, I'll
yeah,
just do some project management on the
yeah.
side, right?
I think they call it the
Um,
boomerang.
the
Yeah,
boomerang back into
yeah.
it, yeah. like where's your mindset at that point? You're like, okay, I have some money, I have this
Yeah.
experience. Now I'm gonna go do small business, and
I
then you
just,
get into flower
yeah. I mean,
arbitrage.
I had a fantasy of being the guy in the cafe that everyone was like, what does that guy do? And this was before, like, this was 2007, 8, remote work wasn't epically. But I just always wanted to be that guy in the cafe that just sat there all day. Like what, and like everybody like, what does that guy do?
Hmm.
I just had this fantasy of controlling. It was really about controlling my own schedule and my time. Like I really, really got ground down. I mean, I had wonderful experiences at Microsoft. I really did get ground down by that notion of like, well, you own these deliverables to other people and they're setting your agenda and your timeline. And even though I was a manager and successful there, at the end of the day, you get the, 3 a.m. email from Steve Ballmer, which, I was on a
Hmm.
project where that happened a few times. And like, you have to fucking get out of bed and deal with that, It's like, yeah, I don't like that.
So no amount of money would get you
No.
out of bed for somebody else at this point.
But I do get out of bed at 3 a.m. for my Peace Fans customers. I mean,
Hmm.
just Sunday night. This almost never happens, but 10 at night, like we had a renter up on Mount Rainier in an old Volkswagen van, and they're like, the van isn't starting. I was like, okay, you're 3 hours away in a really remote location. I guess I'm getting in a replacement van right now and driving it out to you, and I'll probably be there at 1:30 or 2 a.m. and we'll figure this out. Sure enough, it was a user error. They let their battery die and someone came by and gave them a jump and they were fine. But I was willing to, go down to the shop, get a replacement van, drive out to Mount Rainier at 2 a.m.
Well, see, that's the thing. You don't have a boss anymore, but you have to do these things, right? You can't just tell your customer that since they're at the top of the mountain, all they need to do is point Van
Right,
down
exactly. I did
and
think
keep
about that
going.
because at one point I was like, are you sure you have gas in the van? And
Mhm.
I was like, if that was the problem, I was like, well, you can just roll down, from Mount
Right. But and we'll get back to it. But the small businesses, that's what I wonder. Like, is it worth it? And maybe
Yeah,
we can get it out of the way now before we go further
yeah,
into the story. You were what, over 10 years into this
yeah.
now,
I
right?
mean, yeah, go on.
Is it worth it?
Yeah,
Like,
I would say absolutely. If you'd ask my wife, she
mhm.
might have a slightly different story. I mean, there's this whole, like the notion, you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners where it's like, the partner is like, well, you kind of have a mistress. There's kind of another person at the table here. And, it doesn't feel great all the time.
Mhm.
Sunday night example is fine. And, my kids at summer camp, so it's not like I'm missing out on parental obligations if I like left. But there are definitely times where my wife would be like, "Wow, like that Peace Fans is, I think, coming before me." Um,
Mhm.
well, like I think it's absolutely worth it. I think about the stories I'm going to tell myself on my deathbed or when I'm in memory care or whatever my end of life looks like, and I think the stories I'm going to have to tell myself from the Peace Fans era are going to be way more interesting than the stories I would have had to have told myself that I stayed in a large corporate gig and just vested my stock and slowly climbed the ladder to CVP and um,
So it's as much for your soul as it is for anything else, or
100%.
maybe even more so
hundred
than
percent.
anything
Because it
else.
is not, I mean, like, I don't know. Like I sometimes I do the math and I'm like, oh, if I'd stayed at Microsoft, particularly the last 10 years, that, the Satya era, I mean, I'd be retiring a few times over. Whereas, I'm in a fine financial position with Peace Fans, but there's not like a liquidity event around the corner for Peace Fans. It's a small business. So
Mhm.
yeah.
We should talk about this because I
Yeah.
remember you had an opportunity to raise
Yes.
money, right?
Yeah. 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 2020. Yeah.
But I'm still curious about the early days. So, because I also saw a video of you giving a talk about Burning Man, and I
Oh
think by
yeah.
now you've probably been to over 30 years of Burning
20,
Man.
this will be my 27th consecutive year at Burning Man.
To 27 years of Burning Man, and I've never been, but seen pictures.
Yeah.
It almost hard to imagine that you want to go to Burning Man and at the same time you want to run your business, right? Especially because to run a business, you kind of have to be aggressive and focused and all in. It doesn't feel like what Burning Man experience is, but
Well,
you
I
tell us,
would challenge that. Like, I think
Yeah.
I'm successful with my small business. I am those characteristics you described, and I'm also like highly empathic. Um, I'm highly forgiving of myself and my peers and my team, and creativity. I mean, I've worked a lot on this in like, my personal therapy work. We're like, like Peace Fence is like it's my art form. I mean, I'm so creatively expressed within Peace Fans, within my small business, through the brand, through my relationship with the customers, the innovations that we do, the financial engineering. Like, there's so much creativity that gets unlocked within this business that it is very analogous to the Burning Man experience, where like I get to go to this environment where this creativity is it's just lit on fire. So, the Peace Fans feels a lot like that. Like, I'm definitely driven, ambitious. I remember the other sort of type A sort of characteristics you articulated, and I do have those, but I definitely, there's this other side of it that like the nature of Peace Fans allows those characteristics to be expressed.
So for you, Peace Fans is a creative expression. Like it's the way
100%.
to fuel your body with energy.
100%.
It
And,
sounds like
and the personal relationships.
Mhm,
Like, well, I think we'll talk about this later, but I now own this app called Seeker.
mhm.
And yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with, it, because like I love hugging my customers. Like, I love that personal connection. I mean, you came in with your family, like, we became friends and connected. Like, that's what I live for. And like a scale model, like a SaaS, consumer facing scale model, like, well, I love the business model of 97% gross margin, and there's things about it I love, and serving tens of millions of people. Like, I'm not hugging any of those people. And so it's like the intrinsic motivation is a little hard to find for that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So it's a really interesting dynamic at play.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, it was great to come by your place, right, and tour the space and see the
Yeah.
vans, see how the work was done. And even though we are eventually ended up with a much bigger van, and I hope it's okay to say this here, right? But I love the fact that after we looked into the vans, and we discussed like all the details we can put into a Peace Van and so forth, you basically told us like, look, for your family, what you're trying to do with it, this is probably not the best
Yeah.
solution. You should just go and buy the Sprinter van that is going to fit you more. And indeed, we've really enjoyed the Sprinter van we've had for a couple of years, right? But I thought it was pretty amazing because you weren't trying to just sell me the van because you had one, you could sell me it.
Hmm.
And you said it right then. You were like, look, this is like a family experience, right? We're trying
Yeah.
to build relationships, and this is not going to be the best fit for you. So don't do it. Do the other thing. And I really appreciate it. And so, like, at every opportunity after that, when I could tell people about Peace Fans, I did, right? Because I have such a good
Yeah.
feeling about it. Because it's not about the vans; it's about like
Yeah.
you and the company you've built. Um,
Yeah. I
yeah, that.
really try to mentor my team. And one of the big sort of mantras we have here is it's this notion of the relationship over the transaction. Like, I tell my team, like, I don't give a shit about any single transaction. Like, I care about the relationship. So really, like, especially my team that's on the front lines, like, wrap your head around that. Like, a lot of times that means like not closing a deal, or like not, like giving a huge discount on an invoice, or like whatever, or like whatever it takes. But think about that relationship, and don't think about that single transaction that's in front of you. And I really try to extend that to everything in my life. That's just it's just a great rule to live by. And we're lucky that we don't have to sell. Like there's enough demand for pretty much across all of our businesses for everything we do, but we're not desperate to like get every incremental unit sale.
Do you think you're a unique business owner where most people would not run their business this way?
Yeah, very much so. And they definitely have employees, sometimes senior employees, that are like confounded. They're like, and sometimes my CFO, who's a dear friend and trusted partner, and she's just like, wow, it kind of gave away the farm there. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of playing a longer game here, and I'm just
Uh-huh.
not hyper focused on the bottom line. it's like to a fault. I mean, it's like, definitely like I probably won't end the game with as many toys as other people. But like, yeah, and I just feel like I just take this very like empathic, people-centered approach. And I think a lot of small business owners don't feel that luxury because there's so much intense pressure, like especially in the manufacturing space where you have like high fixed costs and it's really hard to ramp things up or down depending on changing business conditions. You really have to be like really bottom line focused.
Mm.
And I don't
Well,
know, I'm just wired a little differently.
I mean, I think it's great that you were differently. I had a friend who passed away, but he was a business owner, right? And a year later, basically, I see notes popping on social media about him, and the way
Right.
people remember him is all these nice things. Where look at how he was basically helping everybody and leaving everybody better than he found them,
Mhm.
right? And maybe it wasn't amazing for business, right? The business could have probably grown
Yeah.
better,
Oh yeah.
and but I think for oneself as a person, like doing that is so much more valuable than however much value you can deliver to your shareholders. Yeah,
Yeah. And I just
actually.
passionately believe that. And it does create tension, with certain employees that just aren't wired that way or they just don't understand that, that notion. We just had something recently. What was it? It was like a customer situation. I think the renter and I don't I think they were unhappy with something and it actually wasn't our fault. It was like user error. And yeah, they were being a little pissy. And I just was like, look, like, something, I'm sorry that this is an issue. The rest of your trip is we're going to refund your entire trip. It's like a $3,400 trip. And like what they were complaining about was honestly, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was like their second battery system, it was working fine, but they're like the readout wasn't calibrated properly. So they're saying like it was 20% full, but it was really like 90% full. And they
Mhm.
could have checked the voltage versus the percentage, and we told them how to do that, and that would give you a hyper accurate reading. And they were just like, "Well, you should have told us not to go by the percentage," and it was confusing. And they were being like kind of difficult. And I was like, "Look, like we're done. You can have your money back. Finish your trip." And they're like, "Oh, we don't want our money back." I was like, "I don't care. Like, like money is a type of energy, and I don't want I don't want that energy around my team."
Mhm.
But my point is, my team members, like, why are you doing that? Like, well, don't reward bad behavior. Like, why are you giving their money back? Like like we shouldn't be giving money back like that. And it's just like I tried to explain this notion of energy, and like I just don't want those people near my team. I'm like protecting you guys. Like these
Mhm.
people they're probably toxic. They're probably I just don't want. And there's this kind of jujitsu that goes on too, where you're like I'm like 10 levels upping them. Like they were, they weren't expecting to get their like $3,400 trip refunded. And then and more often than not, when I do something like that, the customer ends up feeling really guilty. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to behave that way." And I'm like, "Well, whatever. This is how I like to be in the world, and maybe you'll learn a little something from that."
I can see how, from the team's point of view, it's challenging because I think everyone on your team would like to make an extra $3,400,
Mhm.
and this is in a way you're giving somebody extra
Yep.
money
Hmm.
for bad behavior. So in a way, yes, it is rewarding bad behavior, but I can also understand of like, look, I just don't want it to do anything with these people anymore, right? And the least you want is them to finish the trip and then
Yeah.
continue complaining,
Hmm.
because even though they're not entitled to any complaints, right? But
Right.
this way you
Yeah.
kind of just like cut it right off once and for all,
Yep.
and at least they will probably never say anything bad about the company.
No. And we actually had a side story. They actually returned the rental, and I ended up coming down to meet them in the evening just to like, like I wanted to meet them face to face because my experience is 95% of the time when we create a monster out of someone, they're actually not. It's that whole notion, like texting with someone and it's like there's no emotion in the text and things go sideways. And, usually like something else was going on behind the scenes with them probably, and they were upset about something else. And sure
Mhm.
enough, they were a couple and they were definitely some tension when I met them. One
They
of
were
the
stuck
one of
in the
them
van
walked the
together,
wall. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they were like, we actually had the best trip ever, and we want to buy one of these vans from you.
Ah,
And I was like,
nice.
okay, what the fuck am I going to do? I just told my team that we're never dealing with these people again. They've actually come back like very apologetic, and actually they're pretty sweet people now that I've got to know them.
Hmm.
And like, what do I tell my team now? Like, oh, like, like I told them it's not about the money, but now it is about the money. And it was an interesting sort of, like dynamic.
So
That
what
like,
did you tell your team?
I sat the team down and we talked about it, and we all kind of voted, and we ended up selling them a van.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, but it's very
They
Democrat.
felt so guilty. They bought a van.
I
That's
know that it's been
fantastic.
it's like hyper passive aggressive sales technique.
Yeah, here's $3,000 back. Please put down 80,000 deposit.
120.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. That's you
Yeah.
should do this more often. Now
Right.
everybody on your team will be like, "Ooh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah."
It does take that kind of sale. That is a master class. Like I don't expect my team to pull that off.
Wow. But see, it's so much fun to talk about this, right? And I can see how in software with Seeker,
Yeah.
SEKR, right?
SEKR with the little
Seeker.
line over
Yeah,
the.
it's probably going to be a little less fun because you can't invite people into your shop and talk to them,
Yeah.
and you're also not dealing. You're not selling $100,000 of product at a time.
Yep.
You're selling $20 here and
Yep.
there, right?
Mhm.
But tell me, how's that product integrating with Peace Fence nowadays?
I don't know yet. I mean, the story seeker was very opportunistic because I've been following the app for years. I'd always like kind of wished I had a scalable business model within Peace Fans. I wasn't doing anything about it. I'd looked at membership programs and a few subscription models, but Seeker was going away, and I was approached, kind of randomly with an opportunity to pick up the assets, and I was just like, like this thing really needs to keep living. Like it's such a good app. The code base was solid. It was such a hidden gem, and I was like, all right, I'll write the check. And yeah, I ended up spending like probably more on my lawyer than I did on purchasing the assets. And that's just like I'll figure out what we're gonna do with it. Um, so we actually just launched in early June. We went through a 6-month dev sprint. Rewrote the app from the ground up, put in a bunch of new features, re-architected everything, and I think it's like I think can be accretive to Peace Fans, and an enabler. But I think it has much more reach than Peace Fans. So I really do believe it kind of belongs outside of it. And so we're just trying to figure out the strategy, sort of the corporate organizational strategy of it. But I do like the idea where I have this whole family of businesses. I have, like we were talking earlier, and now I have this app that people can like download and use and contribute to and be more. And Seeker is unique in that it's from the community for the community. And that's kind of community with a lowercase c, meaning it's like a very broad definition of community. And most of the apps out there around camping are very transactional focused. They're all
Mhm.
about getting you to book the campsite, get the rev share. And Seeker is really more about the relationship. Like, how do I, meet other van owners that have a van similar to mine or interest similar to mine, heat map where people are traveling to, events, forums, and then this really cool user generated database of secret spots, waypoints, recommendations, etc. So I think it can definitely like support the rest of the Peace Fans family of businesses, but it also is like the potential is much larger. So my trick is to bring on a team that is super passionate, about building software, scaling software, running large communities, and just let them loose. So
Hmm.
I've started that process, and then play the CEO role where like here's the
Mhm.
vision, here's the passion, and here's the resources. Like we don't have to raise money. Peace Fence doesn't have an endless pool of capital to put into Seeker, but we're not, it's not like we're starving, so we can put some resources behind it and really experiment. And then we're experts in the audience, so it's
Mhm.
not like we know the customer extremely well. So, and that's, as in a lot of software startups, that's one of the problems. You get product market fit, but you actually aren't the market anymore. I think you might have even posted something recently about just the importance of a founder knowing the market or being a customer or like I read something recently about just the criticality of that.
Well, one thing I posted recently was saying that I think it's really important to know who your customer to understand who your customer is going to be, because it's going to drive who your employees are going to be, what your business is
Hmm.
going to look like. And you're going to spend a lot of hours doing that, and meeting your customers and interviewing them and just like caring about their problems. So if you get into the space that you don't particularly care about, or the
Yeah,
people you don't want to spend time with,
yeah,
in my opinion, that's going to be a pretty awful
yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah,
So I think that's a very important thing to consider early on.
yeah.
But with Seeker, you're basically building software for yourself,
Yeah,
because
and for people I love, and people doing things that I love to do. So even though it's software and I'm not touching those people, like I'm creating experiences for them. That's super satisfying. Like because I did have at one point one of the businesses I had, I helped some friends start a skincare company for women,
huh,
and it was a really interesting, skincare line. We ended up selling the formulas, and we didn't like have a ton of success with it, but it was because it was so women focused. I was not able to be a spokesperson or like to really represent the audience.
right.
And I realized like, oh, like while I can do all this great financial engineering and strategy and market research, like at the end of the day, like I was like, I couldn't speak to the customers. And there was just a huge problem for the company. One of the leaders, and a very like passionate leader usually, like had to be silent. I just
Mhm.
couldn't do that. It wasn't appropriate.
And before Seeker, you didn't really need any software at Peacefulness, right? There was, I
Yeah.
guess, because all the electric components and everything just comes with a manual. You put it in, it
Yeah.
all works. You don't have to.
Yeah.
So what's that been like? Transitioning, putting this new head. I guess you have software experience. It shouldn't be
Yeah,
that
yeah. I
weird,
mean, it's
right?
been
But
really fun. I was lucky, like the week I took over Seeker, I was having drinks with one of my closest friends, and who, had known him 20 years, ex Microsoft as well. I'm on the marketing side. He's more on the software dev side. Although he was a philosophy major at Brown, but still, he uh, he worked on like the Windows Shell team, and so got really deep in the technology. And I showed him Seeker, and he's really into vans and travel, and had a very successful exit out of a company. And I showed him Seeker, and I was like, Jordan, I own this app. Like you're gonna be my chief product officer. And he's like, oh my god, totally. I'm 100% in. I love this thing. Like this thing is
mhm.
amazing. Like I'm totally in. So it's been amazing to like bring someone in who's so passionate, so skilled. And I understand, the concept of sprints, and I'm in the GitHub, and I'm like kind of using the tools, but like, and I can offer some opinions on how we're structuring things. And when we're talking about database schema and all that stuff, I know what's going on, but I'm not in the weeds on it. So I've been really lucky to recruit in people that are highly skilled, talented, and I have value alignment with. And that's something like that's I think that's one of the things I'm best at is,
Mhm.
just, bringing people in that are super passionate, and convincing them to like just roll the dice on some crazy fucking idea I have, whether it's a Burning Man project, whether it's Peace Fans, in this case, whether it's Seeker, just being like, yeah, I've got this passion, I've got this vision, don't quite know how to get it there, but I know I need you involved.
Well, it's kind of awesome because at this point, like you said, you have a little bit of money where you can invest into this app. The app
Mhm.
doesn't really need much. So, in essence, if you
No.
find people who are passionate about this experience, you can just let them loose, let them
Yeah.
build whatever they think is interesting,
Hmm.
right? And then see if it goes anywhere.
Yep.
And I wonder if, circling back to the idea of raising venture capital and growing a bigger company,
Hmm.
right? If that's like a blessing in disguise that you're basically the major shareholder,
Yeah.
other than you and your wife, other shareholders
No,
and your team
no, no.
members.
I own 100. There's one very minor like shareholder in Peace Fence. He owns 3% from an original employee,
Mhm.
but yeah, we own 97% of it. And I would never do it any other way ever again. It's like like oh my god, the luxury of you mentioned briefly in 2020 and COVID. Yeah, like I had tier one VCs. Literally, like there was a team. I'm not going to name the VC company, but the entity. They came out on the private jet. I picked them up at Boeing
Nice.
Field, and they were quite funny. They're like, "Wow, this is like the first like trip we've done post COVID." Like like there was I can't. It was must have been like April of 21. And I don't remember the exact date, but Yeah, and then we had some other like really high profile people. Two of them were customers of Peace Fans that
Hmm.
wanted to like bring together, like a high powered friends and family round or a small institutional round. And I started putting together the presentations and the business models and went through a bit of it. And I was just like, I fucking don't want to do this, like I just don't need the money. I don't want the money. And like, I was like, you guys, like, I'm really sorry, but like, we're putting an end to this process. Like, I'm not raising capital for this. And it was a great decision.
Was your wife on board?
No, she would have loved to have a little liquidity. Everything's tied up in Peace
Okay.
Fans. She would have appreciated, like, and this is a lot of small business owner conundrum. Like, there really isn't a lot of liquidity. So you can get to, we're cash flow positive and we're profitable and we're able to pull money out, but there's no, I mean, there is a path to like a sale or an owner buyout or something like that at some point.
Right.
But
You can
my wife
double
would
your
have loved,
salary, but you
yeah,
can't take like 5 million out,
yeah. I
basically,
mean, my
right?
wife would have loved that. Don't get me wrong, but I tell her like, someday I'll change my relation with Peace Fans and we'll pull something non-trivial out. So
Well, that's actually, can we talk about this? Because I
yeah,
find this
totally.
interesting, so you worked at Microsoft, now you're working on Vans, a little bit software is
Yeah.
seeking back in, but your kid's in the creative writing program.
Yeah.
Like what do you think about the future for our children, right? And how do you plan as a family with your business background? What do you think she should do versus like she wants to do versus like do you think it matters?
All I want for her is to have an exciting, interesting life. Like, I don't even care if she goes to college, which is kind of, like I went to college. I think I went to the University of Michigan. I have a graduate degree. But, like if she wants to go to art school in Paris, awesome. She wants to travel for 2 years, like college, so I just want her to be healthy and happy and, like live an interesting life and, like, I don't know. Like, I don't have these like epic ambitions for her to have a career or, yeah. So
Is it because you as a father got to the point where you can now sustain her, if something happens? Or
yeah, I
you don't
mean,
think
yeah, I think we're
it's
in a fortunate position where, yeah, I mean, college is covered. I don't think I could support her for like 50 years. Like I don't know. We'll see how Peace Fans
do you have a
facility.
basement?
Yeah, right, exactly. So, but it has been a privilege to, my dad was a doctor. So growing up, I remember going to his office. Some of like my earliest memories and some of my oddly best memories, I remember going to work with my dad. Like that whole concept of like walking around his office and, like he'd give me small jobs and his nurses all knew who I was and his office help knew who I was. And I love bringing Eden, my kid, to Peace Fans. Like, I just
Mhm.
love that so much. Everyone knows her here, and she's done various things here. She's written essays and been in a lot of videos, and thinks she works in marketing sometimes.
But she doesn't pick up a wrench yet and
No,
slide under the van and
no.
why?
Although she has expressed a desire to, but yeah, no, not doing that yet.
Teach her how to change oil, then you never have to
Right?
change oil again,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So yeah, but it has been like it's a real privilege to like to be able to bring my kid into my work world. Like, I feel
Mm.
like that's a really special thing. And I mean, she made fun of me the other day. I think she called me niche famous. Because like in Seattle and in like the van world, like I am kind of like a thing. It's
Mm.
like I wear the t-shirt and like like people know what like I've had someone at TSA like recognize the brand and
Really?
I like to joke with her about it, but she's like, Dad, you're niche famous. You're not famous. She keeps me in my
Well,
place.
today we're gonna make you super famous,
Right. I appreciate it.
internet famous.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But I kind of feel you actually don't want to be famous, right? Like,
Well, there's an ego component.
is
There
there?
definitely is. Like when I was in the New York Times in 2020, there's a 1,000-word feature in the Sunday Style section. Like literally, like you don't like, and I've always been in media. Like I ran a PR team at Microsoft, and I've always been kind of obsessed with news and I've always chased like when I was at Microsoft doing PR, like I loved when I was quoted, in the press. Like I just got a big thrill out of that. Being on TV a few times, handling senior executives. I really just love that world. And so if you had asked me, like my number one goal in the world would have been like a blurb in the New York Times or the New Yorker. Like those are my 5 R's. And I
Mhm.
think it was 2016 or 17, the New Yorker did a big piece on van life. They did like a big, classic New Yorker piece on van life. And the people they were featuring, I knew really well. And they, mentioned to the journalist, oh, you should talk to Harley. And I got
Mhm.
the phone call from the journalist. I was like, oh my God, this is my chance to be in the fucking New Yorker. Like I never knew how I was going to get in the New Yorker. Like
Okay.
neither like the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg or CNN. Like there's always ways into those, but like the New Yorker is a very like rarefied, like you got to be like a thought leader. You got to be like
Mhm.
someone special to be in there. And so I was really like, I drank my coffee and I sat down for the interview and I had my sound bites prepared and then like 3 months later, I got the call from the fact checker and they're like, we just want to, the story's running. I was like, you're kidding me. I'm in the story. I was thrilled. And I
Mhm.
thought it could never get any better than that. But then this New York Times thing happened. And, for me, my wife jokes like, do you want that like on your tombstone, like that New York Times article?
Just framed, boom.
Yeah.
You know?
'Cause
Yeah.
it was like, not only was it like, the Sunday style section, it's a big picture of me, but it was just like, I couldn't have written it better myself. Like
Mm.
even, and it's actually works today because I don't have the beanie cap on, but, the opening paragraph likens me to Michael Stipe of REM. And like REM is like my band. Like I grew up with REM. I've admired them and I've been worship Michael Stipe for years. And to like be likened to him, I was just like, oh my God, it can't get any better. So there's an ego component, so like you asked originally, like, do I want to be famous? I like being recognized. Yeah. And because I get recognized for what I'm doing and I love what I'm doing. Like
You sure hide
people,
it really well because in person you're really humble, just
yeah,
a cool Seattle guy.
yeah. Well, I think part of it is like owning the fact that, yeah, I do have is an ego component to it. I'm not in denial about it. And I
Mhm.
do like that attention, but I like the attention because like the mission of Peace Fans is so good. It's like what we do is like such a good thing. Like putting people on road trips and in vans and getting them outdoors. It's like if I'm famous for that, that's awesome. Like I love that.
Well, it's good for you. It's good for your personality. I'm sure I
Mhm.
can name, 100 people who would not resonate with that
Yeah,
mission,
yeah,
and that's the amazing part that you can somehow embody that mission. And it's hard to tell now, whether it's mission or you,
yeah.
what is part of Peace Vans, kind
Hmm.
of first, right?
Yeah,
Um, but let's see. So you started 2010. That's be
yeah,
like
yeah.
14
We're like,
years
yeah,
now.
we're 12, 13 years
Um,
into 14 years into this thing.
it There had to have been moments where it was really hard and you
Oh
wanted
yeah.
to quit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely like in my dark days, I found myself on LinkedIn. Like, can I get a job?
Hmm.
Like, I kind of need, marriage is struggling, I'm just like, I'm just pouring more money into Peace Fans, having one of those existential crises that happens to small businesses with a high rate frequency. Um, and I'm like, I'm not, wow, like I just can't cut this, and like, so but then, I look at these jobs and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't do that. I got to figure out a way to make this work. Um,
What was that, more financial pressure
yeah,
or okay?
it's financial pressure. And it's just like, I mean, I'm a pretty simple guy, but we have a house, we have a kid, and you require a certain standard of living, we're in
Uh-huh.
Seattle, like, yeah, there's definitely like financial pressure. And there's also, like you see your peer group, you know, banking away the savings and their vested stocks and their RSUs and their options. And, I'm building equity in what, you know? So, yeah.
But it sounds like you've been able to get through the
Yeah.
challenges. I remember we were talking at some point, you said you even went to therapy at some point, right? To help
Yeah.
you get
Oh, yeah.
through this. How was that? Was that meaningful and
Yeah, very
the
much
right
so.
way
Like
to do
I'm
it?
just a big fan of sort of like healthy mental health, like healthy approach to mental health. And like, I have no qualms, right? I love, the process of therapy. I like talking, and it alleviates a lot of pressure on my partner, my wife. Like I can process things in sort of a therapy environment and get some tips and tricks for dealing with things. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely days where like peace fans, it's really hard. And it's also it can be really lonely. You talk to a lot of small business owners. I have done a poor job of having executive support. Like I definitely have had a few advisors here and there. I don't have a board of directors. I don't have a board of advisors. And that was a mistake. I really should have pulled in like all these amazing people that want to see me succeed, like and love me and like love the mission and but I've kind of I don't know, like it's an interesting thing to explore in therapy. Like why have I kind of kept a lot of those people at arm's length? And I think part of it is there's a bit of fear of, being very vulnerable. There's a bit of fear of judgment around like, well, I'm not as successful in certain moments as, like it appears on the outside. And then to expose that to these people, you have to be really vulnerable, to bring someone into your business that like externally looks amazing and perfect and idealized, but internally you're like, oh my God, like, we're struggling to pay this, or, we can't figure out this piece of strategy or this manufacturing process or this supplier problem or this HR problem. It's really, you have to be really vulnerable. I can be a vulnerable person, but I've done a really poor job of that in the context of peace fans. And it's, like my therapist would probably like to dive into that further.
Of course they would, that's money. It's
Yeah.
like lawyers want to keep working on
Right,
your
exactly.
problem.
Exactly. Yeah. I call
But
my
I
lawyer
think,
early in the morning when I know he's taking his kids to school, so he doesn't have
uh,
time to talk.
very clever.
Right.
Nice. It's a good trick. Yeah,
That's a
corner
good
your
tip.
lawyer, make sure they only have 5 minutes, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
He's like, oh, I got to run. I was like, great.
Perfect. Yeah, just make sure to stop your timer, right? But I think that's common theme with a lot of founders, whether startup founders or small business founders. Like you want to share, but I think part of it is you don't know who you can share with. Like what you probably share with a few people. I don't know, maybe you don't at all, right? Then it's really difficult. But it's like for me, I could share with my wife because I know it's
Mhm.
like it's not
Yeah.
gonna cause any damage to the business or anything else. But it's very hard to tell somebody like, oh, I'm struggling with this, and do you have any suggestions, right? And in fact, I've heard from a number of friends, at least in the startup world, where they've done that, and then one thing leads to another, somebody finds out, deals falls through, right? And so you learn not to.
Yeah.
And it's terrible because you're like you're in the prison of your own mind. You could probably solve a problem so much faster by just sharing with somebody who will give you the right advice. Have you tried any kind of networking for sort of
I really
executives,
haven't. I
that
mean,
kind
I'm
of
I'm
stuff?
fortunate in that I have a really wonderful group of male friends. I'm one of these sort of touchy-feely guys, and I got a great group of male friends, and we get together monthly. It's kind of like just an emotional support group, and it's a smart group, and they've known me a long time, and so I'm able to share, not just my personal challenges and successes, but like the business ones, and get really good feedback. And then I did bringing in my CFO has been a really great. She's a great thought partner. She's wicked fucking smart, and she knows me personally, and actually has a huge amount of respect and latitude for my style. So there's none of this like, oh, you're kind of crimping my style here. But there's a lot of like reflective time with her, and that's been like, and I see like, oh wow, I really probably would have benefited from having another thought partner of my caliber like early on.
So you can share comfortably without
Yeah.
feeling judgment
Yeah.
and just
And
get
she's
to the
also the CFO. So you
uh
can't hide anything from her. And she's also a very smart CFO. I tried to hide. When I do try to hide stuff, she finds it.
uh
We were just having this talk about petty cash today. She said,
Well, are
I
you
haven't
trying to hide it because you're like embarrassed about something, or
yeah,
what?
yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I'm just like, oh, like that quarter was down, or like that deal didn't close or whatever. And she's like, I know. It's like I'm solving it, I'm fixing it, She's like, I know you will. Like, I know you're fixing do it better, so but yeah, I find myself even with her sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that
uh,
dirty laundry on the floor. I'll fix it, I'll clean it, I'll pick it up and clean it later.
And is that probably because you feel that need that you have to be the one to fix it?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was reading
100%.
this book about sales and how you should really kind of like do sales in public and share all the data, because then somebody else can pick it up and help you or give you
Mhm.
some ideas, right? The more people know,
Yeah,
the more they're able to help you. But it sounds like, because you started this as kind of like a sole
yeah,
proprietorship, right?
hmm
Um,
yeah,
Interesting. So this is like a learning that you have to go through and convince
mhm,
yourself that it's going to be helpful to you.
yeah. And there's a bit of story around, sort of wanting to be the smartest person in the room. And when you're asking for help, you're almost like de facto admitting like you're not. And so it's like just remembering like A, you're not, and B, that's not the end state. That's not the end goal. Like being the smartest person in the room is like not actually like a winning strategy for life.
Actually, that brings me to this. What's your leadership style? Because you did that Burning Man. What was
Yeah.
the name of the group called for a
The,
while?
the group is called Hippocampus, and we're actually turning that into a book finally. Like
Ah,
I'm
interesting.
finally like, iterating on a book around, management theory, leadership
Mhm.
theory that kind of like the Microsoft big corporate world, Burning Man arts nonprofit world, and kind of small business, brand driven businesses. And like what management theories are, applicable across all three of those, which covers like a lot of business, a lot of
Mhm.
just use cases. I mean, yeah, my leadership style is it's a like I mean I have those 10 that talk goes through 10 tenets. Like I have 10
Mhm.
like things that I subscribe to. I've never really done the hard work of summarizing into one or two sound bites, but it's I really enjoy empowering people. I tell people I'm like not a micromanager by far. I'm a macro manager. I really don't care about like how you get the job done as long as you're operating ethically and with integrity. As long as you get the job done. My team, I don't like my hourly team does have fixed hours, but like most of my, office people like can come and go as they please and do what they want. And so I really just believe in people. And I kind of I only want to work. I think this is on my LinkedIn profile. Like, I only want to work somewhere where I want to work with the people that are there. So I kind of created a company where it's like full of people I like. And,
So
'cause
it is more of
I
a
want to love
Burning
coming
Man,
to work every day. Like, I want to love coming to work every day. And I just have to like love my team to do that.
but I guess they do show up at the office these days, right? So
Yeah, yeah, I come in
you
every day.
still,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, I come in every day. Yeah, just like it's such a fun environment. And I love my team. Like I just get energized by the team. And I actually get feedback from the team where like I'm just too talkative. I'm too distracting
they want
sometimes.
to go get work done, and you're
Yeah, they want to go
still.
get shit done. And I'm like, I just want to hang out. And like, cause I'll work all night, like I don't
Mhm.
expect them to. So I can like just shoot the shit during the day. So
So I'm gonna push this
yeah.
topic a little bit, because I can see you don't want to talk about tough times, but you mentioned at the beginning where Mercedes all of a sudden
Yeah.
decided that they don't want to supply the vans anymore to the American market, right? In times like this, as a business leader, what's your thought process? Especially given that you want to be the smartest guy in the room, it's
Oh
hard
yeah.
to admit that you're struggling, and yet it's a multi-million-dollar business. You got to get through it.
Yeah.
How do you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, number one, I had to tap into like my like hardwired optimism,
Mhm.
like where like I'm gonna solve this. Like I don't quite know how, but like there is a path out of this. And some of that is, it's like a bit of like famine. Like I found myself, this is an interesting story. Like, last year, like it was about like January or February of last year, like we were really like, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen here. Like our financial projections were like, wow, we're going to, like cash flow is going to go negative soon or like in 6 months. We don't really have a replacement product. Seems like our sales were getting a little slow. And we were coming up to my daughter's bat mitzvah, the traditional Jewish 13-year celebration. It was a big deal in our family. And her and I were studying together. And I found myself like having a hard time being present, with that experience leading up to it. And I was just like, I need to really like get myself out of this work worry thing for a little bit. And I actually worked with my CFO, and we built like a really optimistic business model. Spent a day, like, what's the best possible scenario here? And we built that. And for like the next 30 days, I only looked at that model,
Hmm.
and I kind of lived with that model. And it really, I was just like, okay, like this could happen, this outcome could happen. And it really helped me sort of kind of push that into the background a little bit so I could really focus and be present. But it was really hard. And so, like, how do I cope? I mean, it's like, yeah, having that, tapping into that hardwired optimism. And I don't know if that's like a neurological thing or not. Like, someone probably has done some like MRI neurological studies on entrepreneurs, and like, like what is going on in that, like, whether it's the corpus or whatever
Whether
fucking
you're damaged, where this is the only way
right,
you can do things. Yeah.
right, yeah. In some
Yeah.
ways, like you have to like, yeah, and then really, it was really important for my team to believe in me. Like I spent a lot of time with my team telling them, like, being honest, like, I don't quite know what we're going to do, but I will come up with a plan, and we'll solve this, and like, you guys need to put your heads down, and here's what you need to focus on. Um, like, and then just really surrounding myself with people that really cared about me and were really supportive of me, and people that were, at all negative, kind of really moving them to the margins. So,
In times like this, do you end up where, you promised something, you said we're going to come up with a plan, you have this focus on something that could work, and then a
mhm,
month goes by and it just doesn't work. And then you still
yeah,
have to iterate. You have to go back to
yeah,
first step
yeah,
and tell everybody that, okay, well, that failed,
yeah.
but we're going to do it again. How does the
Mhm.
team respond to this?
It's hard, but I think over the years I've built up such trust and goodwill with the management techniques, just the empathy, the sort of not micromanaging people, leading by example. There's just an incredible amount of trust the team has in me. So they're not worrying about it, and they're
Mm.
just focused on doing the jobs and supporting me and finding the next new thing. And I have to, like, just maintain that confidence, and really just pound the pavement. Like, I mean, I don't know when this is going to air, but in 2 or 3 weeks we're going to make a fairly substantial announcement. That is like a huge fucking win for us that I've been working on for a year, and like, just Sisyphean task almost. Getting that boulder up the mountain, and I've done it. Yeah, there were dark days where I was like, I don't know if this is going to happen. I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this one off, and I don't really have a plan B here. But there would be a plan B. There's always a plan B. So,
An entrepreneur friend of mine said that if you don't have a safety net, you don't fail.
mhm,
So maybe this
yeah,
is part of it.
yeah,
But
that is,
it sounds like the organization that you built works for you,
yeah,
right? Because of all this level of trust and the pace you're running on and
mhm,
how you treat people. And I think if you took that and put it in, say, like a team at Microsoft, it could very well fail because
yeah,
it's a giant company. You can't rely on people staying
yeah,
around.
yeah,
The dynamics are totally different.
yeah, yeah. And then at the end of the day, like, someone will trump your leadership style.
Mhm.
Like you're not the final word, and people, like, people don't really. It's hard to trust someone to a high degree when they can be vetoed.
Mm.
So, people know, like, if I say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. You know,
One way or another, you'll
yeah,
make it happen because you're in charge. It makes sense.
mhm,
Well, so now you mentioned there's something new and exciting coming in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to it. Is it a new car? Is it a new travel plan? Is
yeah,
it all of the above?
yeah,
So you've got Seeker going on. If you want to talk more about it, please
yeah,
do. I'm just curious, like with everything you do, where's Peace Fans going for the next
yeah,
10 years?
yep. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited about our classic EV conversion business.
Mm.
Like, starting with Volkswagens, because there's such an install base, and there's such passion around the platform, converting those old cars to electric. Like, I just
Mhm.
was reading today in Bloomberg, like the cost of batteries continues to plummet. And we see that just on the retail end. They were talking about, the structural economics and the overcapacity in China, and just all the structural things that are going to, like, cause battery prices to continue to go down significantly for the long long term they're talking. And I really believe in that business. Like, it's been incredibly slow to start. But people are like, when are you exiting that? Because it doesn't look like you're getting momentum. I'm like, this is a 5-10 year business. Like, we're just building processes now, building brand preference so that when the technology and the cost is affordable, like we are the default player. And people, of course, I'm gonna have Peace Fans convert my classic car to electric because they've now been doing it 5 years, and they have all this scale now finally. And so I really, really love that business. And I think it expands beyond, the Volkswagen platform, goes to the classic Mercedes, there's some BMWs, Porsche, there's a bunch of category of cars. It's interesting, you talk to millennials. They don't even want cars because they don't want cars because they're fucking boring and ugly. So you show them like a classic Jag or like an old VW, and they're like, "Oh my God, I would drive that in a heartbeat." But oh, it stinks and I have to fill it up with gas. I'll forget it. Oh, it's electric. Yeah, sign me up. Like my first paycheck will go towards that.
Tell me, where did you find those millennials that have 100 grand to spend
I
on a
know they're
car?
you know
You
they're the
know,
they're the the high net worth millennial. We did a
right.
segmentation once, and we did have a segment called high net worth millennials. The dual income, working at Microsoft, not really, no kids yet, living downtown in a condo.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
Indeed, if they have a nice convertible that's quiet
yeah,
and enjoyable,
hmm
and they only need to go like tops 50 miles in each
exactly.
direction,
Yeah,
because
perfect. Yeah. So I really believe in that business. The thing we're going to announce in a couple of weeks is going to be a big deal, and that should easily replace the sunsetting mattress business. Is much more aligned with our brand. So really excited about that. I do think Secret has a lot of potential. Um, we're doing interesting things in Mexico. We rent vans in Baja now.
Mhm.
We have 4 or 5 vans, classic Volkswagens that live in Baja, California, and down in La Paz, and we rent them. And it loses money, but it's super fun. And I really believe there's an opportunity to build a branded travel experience down there, with campsites and itineraries and full trips. And, it's not going to scale, but I just like that hospitality component. I like creating experiences for people. So I get really excited about that business, and that can be a marginally accretive to, Peace Fans bottom line. So yeah, so I think, we're in a really good position right now. So, and we're in a really good position because of the brand. I talk a lot about that. Really what we've built here at Peace Fence is a brand, and a brand gives you an opportunity to do all sorts of new things. People will trust you and try
Mhm.
your next thing if they trust your brand and like your brand. So we could do all sorts of new things, and I think people will be like, "Oh yeah, like I'm willing to give that a shot. Try that."
It sounds like as long as you have the curiosity to do the next thing, Peace
Yeah.
Fans is gonna keep doing that thing.
Yep, totally. And that's been for me, like historically, like I'd go 2 or 3 years on a project, and I just, I need to do something new and different. I'd move on to the next shiny thing. Peace Fans, I've been able to architect a brand where I can, I solved the VW repair and restoration business in 2 years and moved into a rental business. And we were the first ones to really rent vans. And so 2 years I solved that, and that business was moving along. And then we decided to build like new modern pop-up camper vans with Mercedes. It took like 2 or 3 years to do that. And then we have, this EV conversion business. And then, like all these businesses that I start new businesses every 2 to 3 years. And some of them fail. I started a camping equipment rental company called Peace Fans Outfitters that I was
Right.
like, I couldn't believe it didn't succeed. I was like, who wants to buy all this camping gear for one trip a year? Like just rent it from us. But like it didn't work. So closed it down.
You gotta try things, and you're
Right,
in
you
a
got to try
position to
things.
do
Yeah,
it.
you got to
Yeah.
try things, and I think the team really respects that when I try things, I'm not sucking up their resources. I'm bearing the brunt of most of the trial. So it's not like I'm like, let's all go do this, and then it
Mhm.
fails. They're like, why the fuck did we just go do that? Like, let's go do this. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to bring in temporary people, and you keep doing your thing, and you can get excited by this. But I'm not going to ask you to help me chase this dragon. So
Honestly, I think it sounds great that you put yourself in a position where you don't have this external pressure to grow.
Mhm.
faster, right? Go in the
Yeah.
direction you don't like, where you can take your time to work on the thing that you really think is going to succeed, even if it might take 5 years to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
At the same time, the downside of that is you have to take on all the stress because there's no one
Yeah.
there to help
Yeah.
you along. And part of me wants to say, what's the like one advice you want to give to small business owners? But I think there's not like one advice. There's probably 1,000
Mhm.
pieces of advice you would want to share, and you've shared some of it here. But actually, for you and Peace Fans, if somebody's listening to this, what are some things you want to be better at? You might be struggling with, you want to improve, that if they hear it, they can go and be like, hey, Harley, I know how to do just the right thing for you, like in this context. Is there anything like that?
I mean, I think we touched upon, I wish I was better. And this is not something that someone's going to operationally raise their hand and say, I know how to help you sell or how to cut that widget, but really asking for help.
Mm.
Like I'm really, really like, I want to believe I can solve all the problems we have. And I can do that myself. And I'm really bad at, sort of being like, man, I just don't, I'm struggling here. Like I need some help. I know there's people outside of Peace Fans, and I have such a powerful network. Like when I
Mm.
have done that, like it's amazing the people that respond, and I'm just like, wow, like, yeah, that's awesome. So, I think that's, like the advice I would give people and the advice I should take myself is like being just more vulnerable and not being afraid to ask for help. Like everyone's struggling in some way or another. But if they're not being self-critical or they're not looking at themselves enough. On the operations side, we just did it today. I just gloss over when we look at the books. Like, I just can't, like, I can't focus on like the numbers. It's like, I'm so bad at it, and just like Sandy, our CFO, we were just, because we're wrapping up our taxes and all this. And she's like, well, we have like $280,000 in COGS that map to this account. And I think we should move it here. And it's just like, just like, can I go check my email? Like, I don't know. Like,
That's why you have her, right? You're like,
right,
is
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
positive? Like,
And it's really interesting because I think she knows I don't really care, but she actually needs the validation, that like that work is hyper valuable. And so I
mhm.
really need to, and I forget because she's a peer, like that, like that, oh, she actually needs this validation and this acknowledgement that's solving this $280,000 COGS conundrum, which really isn't material to us. Um, Super important to her. And the amount of work she put in to solve it or to present me with options, like I really needed to recognize that and like forget about my own inability to focus on it and really focus on what she needed as a person and as a coworker. And I'm really good at that with everyone except my direct peers. Like my direct
Mm.
peers, sometimes I'm like, I don't need to have frequent one-on-ones with you or give you critical feedback, and because we're peers. And I think that recognizing that your peers really need that and deserve that is something like I would like to be better at.
But it sounds like your peers might also need to reach out to you and say, Harley, let's go get a coffee right here. I have
Yeah.
some feedback for you,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
actually need that too.
Yeah. Totally.
You're the guy in charge. You can't tell people you need help, but help
Mhm.
doesn't need this necessarily to be operational. It could be just like,
Yeah.
here's some thoughts about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
I've also noticed when we are struggling, when we are going through an existential crisis or a struggle, I do tend to, let go of some of the people side of stuff. I mean, I'm definitely empathic and walk around and talk to people and engage and socially, but I have noticed, like, I'm like, I really don't want to sit down and have like the one-on-one right now because, like, I don't know, I have an answer to that really hard question. So, like, I think I just need to be really mindful and better at that.
I've noticed that a trait with a lot of business owners, like if you don't know, but you're the one in charge, it's very hard to admit back
Yeah.
to that vulnerability because you don't
Hmm.
know what happens when you do that. So you pretend that you're fine and everything's
Yeah.
going to be great, and it's more
And with
pressure on
with the
you.
Mercedes project, I did experiment with that. I told the team, like, it's obvious in the news. I was like, I don't fucking know what we're gonna do. I do know where I'm going to. I negotiated with Mercedes. I got enough vans to extend production for 2 full years.
Mhm.
So I was just like, okay, we have 2 years of production. That's like an infinite amount of time to figure something new out. So we'll figure something out. I'm just like, don't know what it is right now. So
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So somebody's listening to this, they're really excited. Peace Van sounds a great business. What's the best way to start to actually enjoy, especially if you've never done this kind of van camping experience, right?
Mhm.
Just quickly tell us, like, how do you get into it? What do you expect? What's the easiest way to make it easier on yourself so you actually have the best time? And who
Mhm.
do you bring along?
Yeah. I mean, I would just rent a van. When we started renting 8, 9 years ago, we were the only ones. Like we were Outdoorsy, which is kind of the big peer-to-peer marketplace. We were their first customer. Like Jeff and his son Spencer came into our shop. Like, hey, we're starting this business. We're gonna rent like peer-to-peer rentals, and you want to list on our website. I was like, sure, why not? Um, but now there's there's hundreds of vans, van rental companies. I mean, you're in Colorado, there's at least half a dozen. There's something we talk a lot about this in the context of seeker. There's something magical about a road trip. I talk a lot about a road trip as an American archetype, like a Jungian archetype, getting back into psychology. And it's like, it's part of like I think like, and I also, there's that whole game. You can always say like, oh, there's two types of people in the world. There's people like crunchy peanut butter and creamy peanut butter or whatever. But I actually hate all peanut butter, so I'm not one of those. But there's people that like love a road trip and hate a road trip. But for the people that love a road trip, there's nothing quite like it. That experience of like the potentiality of a road trip and the serendipity that could happen. Just putting yourself in that space where a magical moment can be just right around the bend. It's not this like pre-planned vacation. You're staying in one place or where you're going day to day to day. Like on a road trip, there's almost infinite surface area for serendipity and magic. And so I just think whether it's with Peace Fans or anyone else, if you're all attracted to that concept of the road trip and want that expansive type of travel, just go rent a van and just get on the road and leave yourself open to magic as it happens.
And if
And
you happen to be near Peace Vans, definitely rent a Peace Van.
yeah, I
And
mean,
then,
again, but going back to what I was saying, like I'm not the sales guy. Like rent any van.
uh-huh.
Like ultimately one day a road will lead to us and we'll generate some revenue from you, but like could be, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, I don't care. But just go have a wonderful travel experience, the way we like to travel, like a serendipitous road trip. Yeah, so that's what I would suggest.
And if you're into Burning Man, join Harley
Yes, yes.
at
Either
the next
Look for
burn.
our lemon art car out there. Yeah, the Burning Man thing is really interesting. It's like I was just talking to someone the other night. They're like, God, how like you're still going? And I was like, yeah, at this point, like I'm one of the like longest continuously attending people of the event. Like there's probably 200 people that have gone this many years.
Wow.
And it's just really fun. Like I tell the story, like, because, in the tech world, like for a period of time, like Burning Man was kind of like this thing you did and like a kind of like calling card of like, I'm cool, I'm hip. And there are times I'd be in meetings, some pretty, well-known people or VCs or whatever. And like,
Mhm.
for whatever reason, Burning Man comes up and like, oh, I've been 3 years and I've been 5 years. And I just shut the fuck up and sit in the background. And my turn comes like, have you ever been to the playa? And I'm like, been like 24 times. They're like, what? It's this weird like cultural currency thing that like just continues to accrue like marginal value as you get into the 26, 27, 28 years. So yeah, and again, like you said, taking my daughter she's done 3 years. She's taking this year off. That's just been such a wonderful experience to connect with her out there and build an art car and have those experiences. That's just super, super fun.
At this point, you'll be like a 95-year-old guy with a
I
cane,
know. I
still
will be.
strolling through the
I
plaza,
will be.
right?
I will be that person.
That's
But I'll
kind
do
of
it
awesome.
proudly.
I
Yeah.
gotta ask you, another guest on my podcast was talking about ecstatic dance in San Francisco and how
Mm-hmm.
allegedly you go there and you meet people and one thing leads to another and then you end up with a job at Google because
Yeah.
you
Totally.
made friends. Is
Yep.
that the same thing about Burning
Yeah.
Man?
I've met. I can't say who I've met and hung out with there, but some brand names. And it's just like, wow. And like kind of maintained a you know tenuous but a social connection with some of them. So yeah, it's an interesting space. Where, um, yeah.
Interesting. Maybe I'll have to check it out at some point.
Let me know. I'm happy to give you the everything you need to know to have
The
at least be
lowdown to not get
successful.
lost.
Can't guarantee success out there, but I can sort of get it set up.
What is success at Burning Man?
Just being open to the experience. There's a famous saying like you never get the burn you want, you get the burn you need. So like you go in with all these expectations, oh, I'm going to do this, do this, do this. And then you come out of it, you're like, wow, none of that happened. But the transformation that happened is what I actually really needed. So just being really open to the experience, and I think being ready for it to be completely different from what you went in expecting is would be success.
Interesting.
And then not getting hurt.
You can get hurt.
Yeah.
Last year you could have got stuck in the mud, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Never
We were
come
stuck.
out.
My kid missed the first week of 8th grade.
That's awesome.
She had to write a paper. She had to write
Such a
paper
good
on
story.
It's a great story.
So I was with my dad at Burning Man. What do you
The
want?
head of
This is
school,
not so
the head of her
important.
school is super cool, and he actually said because people opened up their Starlink network, so you were able to get online with Ubiquity. And he like sent an email. He's kind of a buddy. He sent an email and he's like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure you guys are stuck at Burning Man. Hope you're having fun. Tell Eden she needs to like do a lecture on it when she gets back."
That's amazing.
Yeah,
It's almost a better experience than school.
but definitely, yeah. Oh my god. So yeah,
Well, I really appreciate you sharing this story.
this
and
was
I
so
think-
much fun,
yeah.
Kirill. It's really fun to reconnect. I do remember walking you and the kids and your wife around the shop and hanging out. And I think you came back twice.
I
And,
did. We really wanted Peace Van.
No. And that happens a lot. People are like, I just want to do business with you, even though it's the wrong product. And I'm like, I appreciate that. Like, I really appreciate that, but it's not the right thing for you. Like, buy a shirt.
It was kind of like that. It's just like,
I know we
it
get that
wasn't
a lot.
necessarily wrong, but I was like, well, I feel like I need to because like Harley was so nice. Everything was so awesome,
Yeah, but we're really clear. Like, I would much rather have a lasting relationship than a transaction.